Okay, so let's dive right in. Imagine this. Uh, Massive document, right? A single bill trying to rewrite huge chunks of the U.S. tax code, touching almost everything economically. And that's what we're tackling today. This really comprehensive piece of legislation. It's got this intriguing title, The One Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah.
Our goal here is simple, really. Cut through all that complexity. We want to pull out the key bits for you, help you quickly see what changes might affect, families, workers, businesses, even how the government runs.
Yeah.
Without getting lost in all the jargon.
Yeah, it's not just the name, is it? The sheer scoop here is pretty amazing. We're not talking small tweaks. This thing is huge, monumental, really, and it's organized sort of into three big sections. One for making American families and workers thrive again. Then there's making rural America and Main Street grow again, and making America win again.
Plus, yeah, that crucial bit about the public debt limit, too. It's all in there. Okay, let's start where it hits home for most people, the wallet. Personal finances. So for families, workers,
Yeah.
a lot of those tax rates, the bigger standard deduction we've gotten used to, they were going to expire. But now, they're permanent. Is that right? It seems like a pretty big deal for planning.
Absolutely. That's a huge headline here. Making those modified income tax brackets, the lower rates, permanent. That takes away a lot of uncertainty. People can actually plan their budgets. Businesses can plan investments much more confidently. And yeah, the standard deduction nearly doubled. That's permanent too. It even gets an extra bump for inflation 1 year. But here's where it gets quite interesting. There's an extra temporary boost on top of that. Just for 2025 through 2028 tax years, an extra $1,000 for single filers, $1,500 for head of household, and $2,000 for married couples filing jointly.
Okay, so temporary extra bump there.
Exactly. But on the flip side, that deduction for personal exemptions, that's gone permanently.
Right, okay. So a solid foundation with those permanent changes, plus a little extra for a few years. What about help for families with kids?
The child tax credit gets a big boost too. Direct support. It permanently doubles to $2,000 per kid.
$2,000, okay.
And like the standard deduction, there's a temporary extra increase for 2025 through 2028. It goes up to $2,500 per child then. So that's meant to be real, consistent help with, the costs of raising kids.
Makes sense. Any catches?
There are some expanded requirements for Social Security numbers. It's not just the child anymore. The taxpayer claiming the credit and the spouse if filing jointly, they all need what's called a work-eligible SSN now.
Ah, okay. Work-eligible SSN for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Good to know. What about, say, small business owners or people dealing with estates?
Yeah, shifting over to business owners, that qualified business income deduction, the QBI.
Right.
That's permanent now, and it actually increases, goes from 20% up to 23%. They've tweaked the phase-in rules too, supposedly to stop people hitting super high marginal rates unexpectedly, keep more money with small businesses.
23%, okay.
And then on the estate side, the exemption for estate and gift taxes, also permanent, and it gets a big increase in 2026, up to $15 million for single filers, $30 million for married couples, and that'll be indexed for inflation going forward.
$30 million. Wow, that's significant change for planning wealth transfer.
Huge difference, yeah.
So, okay, we've got these extensions, some permanent, some boosted temporarily. Does the bill introduce any totally new ways for people to get tax relief?
It really does. A few novel things here. First, there's a new deduction specifically for tips, qualified tips. It's an above-the-line deduction, which means you take it right off your gross income. Doesn't matter if you itemize.
Oh, interesting. For servers, gig workers.
Exactly. W-2 employees, independent contractors, both covered. Runs from 2025 through 2028. You do need that work-eligible SSN again, though. And related to that, the FICA tip tax credit that's for employers that expands now includes beauty service places, too. There's also another new above-the-line deduction. This one's for overtime pay. Same deal. 2025 to 2028 need a work-eligible SSN.
So, special deductions for tips and overtime.
Yeah.
What else is new?
Well, for seniors, folks 65 and older, there's an enhanced deduction, an extra $4,000. It does have income limits, but still, specific help there.
Good.
And this one's interesting. For people with car loans, a new deduction up to $10,000 for interest paid on a passenger vehicle loan.
$10,000 for car loan interest.
Yep. Above the line again. And this is a key detail, it only applies to vehicles assembled in the U.S.
Ah, okay. A Buy American angle there.
Seems like it. And that one's also temporary, 2025 through 2028.
Got it. Very specific incentives indeed. What about other family support? Childcare, education,
Yeah.
any new savings ideas maybe?
Yeah, the bill casts a wide net there for childcare. The credit for employers who help provide it, that gets a permanent boost. Big time.
Yeah.
The max credit jumps from $150,000 way up to $500,000, covers up to 40% of their costs.
Wow, $500,000.
And for small businesses, it's even better. $600,000 credit, 50% of costs. Plus, they can now pool resources or use outside groups to offer childcare, more flexibility.
That could make a real difference for working parents.
Definitely. And the paid family and medical leave credit, PFL, that's made permanent too. It expands to cover PFL insurance premiums. It's available nationwide now. And they lowered the work requirement. Used to be a year. Now it's just 6 months with the employer.
6 months. Okay, that's helpful.
Adoption credit becomes partially refundable up to $5,000. And importantly, tribal governments are now recognized for determining if a child has special needs for this credit.
That's a good inclusion. Education.
509 plans get broader. You can now use tax-free distributions for more K-12 stuff, curriculum, tutors, testing fees, even homeschool expenses, and also for post-secondary credentialing. So not just traditional college degrees, but other certifications too, recognizing different paths.
Right, that makes sense.
There's also a little temporary something for charitable giving for people who don't itemize. A partial deduction up to $150 single, $300 married, just for cash donations. Again, 2025 to 2028.
A little encouragement for non-itemizers.
Exactly. And then there are these brand new accounts. They're called MAGA accounts.
MAGA accounts. Okay, that's the name. What does it stand for?
Money accounts for growth and advancement. They're savings accounts for young kids under age 8. The money has to be invested in U.S. equities. Parents can put in up to $5,000 a year after tax.
Invested in U.S. stocks for kids under 8.
Interesting. And here's a unique part. A pilot program for newborns gives a $1,000 federal contribution for U.S. citizen babies born between 2024 and 2028.
$1,000 from the government.
Yep. But again, the catch. Both parents need work-eligible SSNs to get it. Access to the money is limited before the kid turns 30. And if used for qualified stuff, the gains are taxed like long-term capital gains.
So it's a long-term savings vehicle, seeded potentially by the government, aimed at U.S. investments. Lots to unpack there.
Definitely a novel concept. Early financial literacy, maybe.
Yeah.
Wealth building. It's framed that way.
Okay. Beyond those direct financial things, what about health? Health savings accounts, HSAs, are super popular. Any changes there?
Big expansions for HSAs, yes. The bill formally locks in those choices arrangements, HRAs, linked with individual insurance plans.
Okay.
And for HSA eligibility itself, it gets broader. Working seniors, even if they're eligible for Medicare Part A, can keep contributing to their HSAs now.
Oh, that's new?
Yeah, and you can also contribute even if your spouse has a flexible spending account, an FSA, that used to block you.
Right. I remember that rule. So more people can use HSAs. What can they spend the money on?
More things now. Direct primary care DPC services are now eligible, up to $150 a month, single, $300 family.
DPC. Okay. That's becoming more common.
And this is a big one. You can now use HSA funds for physical activity, fitness, exercise costs.
Really? Like gym memberships?
Certain amounts, yeah. Up to $500 a year for an individual, $1,000 for a family. That's a major shift, tying wellness spending directly to health tax benefits.
Definitely. What about the plans themselves?
More plans can be HSA compatible. Now all bronze and catastrophic plans on the insurance exchanges are allowed to be HSA eligible. Gives people more options if they want that high deductible setup.
Increases choice there. Anything else on HSAs?
Yes. Contribution limits go up for lower income folks, an extra $4,300 for self-only, $8,550 for families. Phased out as income rises, though. Employers get the option to let employees roll over unused FSA or HRA money into an HSA if they switch to a high deductible plan.
Oh, that avoids the use it or lose it problem with FSAs.
Could do, yeah. And one last small flexibility. Medical costs incurred up to 60 days before you actually open the HSA can now count as eligible expenses.
Helpful if there's a delay setting it up. Okay, so lots of tweaks making HSAs more flexible and accessible. We've hit families pretty hard. Let's zoom out. What about boosting the broader economy? Small businesses, rural areas? That section titled Making Rural America and Main Street Grow Again.
Right, a good transition. The bill definitely aims to spur growth there. Key things. Immediate expensing, letting businesses deduct 100% of qualified property costs right away. That's extended and enhanced through 2030.
100% expensing. Okay.
And also through 2030, businesses can immediately deduct domestic R&D costs, research and experimental spending, clear incentive to invest and innovate domestically.
R&D expensing is back, okay. That's been a big
Yes.
ask.
Definitely. Then Opportunity Zones, OZs. They're getting a second round, basically, from 2027 to 2033. But with changes. The definition of a low-income community is tighter, and a third of all new OZs must be rural.
More focus on rural.
Yeah, and they've created Rural Qualified Opportunity Funds, RQOFs. These offer a better tax break, a 30% step up in basis instead of 10% if you hold the investment for 5 years or more.
So extra incentive for rural OZ investment.
Exactly. Plus, you can now invest up to $10,000 of your regular post-tax income into OZs or these new RQOFs.
Yeah.
And for fixing up old buildings and rural OZs, the substantial improvement rule is easier to meet. Only need to invest 50% of the building's basis, down from 100%.
Making it easier to rehab properties there
Yes.
seems very targeted at channeling capital.
Very much so.
Now, speaking of smaller players, what about those, those pesky 1099K forms everyone's been talking about? The $600 threshold from platforms like Venmo, Etsy, caused a lot of headaches.
You are absolutely right. That's been a huge pain point. Well, good news for many folks there. The bill actually repeals that $600 rule for third-party payment networks.
Repealed it. So back to the old way.
Effectively, yes. It pushes the threshold way back up. Not just $600 anymore, but up to $20,000. And you need more than 200 transactions.
Wow. Okay, $20,000 and 200 transactions. That takes a lot of casual sellers and gig workers out of the reporting net.
Huge relief for them, yeah. Less paperwork, less confusion. And related, the general threshold for businesses reporting payments to independent contractors, the 1099 NEC, that also goes up from $600 to $2,000.
Okay, higher thresholds all around for that kind of reporting.
Seems so. What else for businesses? The Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, LIHTC, gets 3 boosts, restores the main 9% credit back to higher 2021 levels, makes it easier to use the 4% credit with bonds, and specifically labels Indian and rural areas as difficult development areas, all aimed at boosting affordable housing construction there.
More housing support.
And for small manufacturers, the size limit to qualify for certain simpler tax accounting methods goes way up, from $25 million in gross receipts to $80 million.
$80 million. That brings a lot more companies under that umbrella.
Right. With inflation, that'll be around $100 million by 2026, so it helps more medium-sized manufacturers too. Oh, and one totally random one. The 10% excise tax on indoor tanning services. Repealed.
Huh. Okay. Tanning tax is gone. All right, let's move to the next big section. Make America Win Again. The title itself sounds like a shift in direction. What's in here? Seems like maybe some cuts alongside the benefits.
That's a fair assessment. This section definitely represents a major realignment. Clear winners and losers, especially with existing tax credits, particularly clean energy ones.
Okay, so what's happening with energy credits?
It's a pretty dramatic change. A whole slew of clean energy and electric vehicle credits basically have their expiration dates accelerated, pushed up to December 31st, 2025.
End of next year. Which ones?
We're talking the credit for used EVs, the main credit for new EVs, that $7,500 one, credits for commercial clean vehicles, for EV charging stations, also the credits for making your home energy efficient, putting solar panels or batteries on your roof, the credit for builders of energy efficient homes, all accelerated to expire end of 2025.
Wow, that's sweeping. What about bigger energy projects?
The Clean Hydrogen Production Credit also sees its end date moved up for any facility starting construction after 2025. And other major credits like for clean electricity production, investment, carbon capture, nuclear, advanced manufacturing, they don't end immediately, but they start phasing out significantly, wrapping up by 2031.
So a near-term end for consumer credits and a phase-out for industrial ones. Is there a common theme?
If you connect the dots, yes, a really critical thread running through the credits that remain, even if phasing out, is these new restrictions based on prohibited foreign entities.
Prohibited foreign entities. What does that mean?
Broadly, it means entities tied to certain foreign governments or those getting key help like components, design, know-how from those entities. So it's clearly trying to steer the benefits away from supply chains involving specific countries.
I see. A geopolitical angle to energy tax policy.
Definitely. And another big change, the ability to sell these credits. Transferability, that's repealed for future projects too. Makes them harder to finance potentially.
All right, that transferability was a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, massive shift on energy. What else falls under Making America Win Again?
Okay, shifting gears. The SALT deduction cap, state and local taxes.
Ah, yes, always controversial. What's the change?
The cap goes up to $30,000 per household, $15,000 if married filing separately. Currently, it's $10,000.
So relief for people in high tax states.
Yes, but with a catch. There's a phase down for higher earners. If your modified adjusted gross income is over $400,000, $200,000 MFS, that 30K cap starts shrinking.
Okay, so targeted relief, not for the very top earners.
And
Okay,
is this
that's right.
permanent? The bill makes this modified cap permanent, yes.
Yes, several provisions aimed there. The existing $1 million limit on deducting executive pay for public companies. That's broadened to cover more compensation. For big nonprofits, the excise tax on paying executives over $1 million. It now applies to any employee over that threshold, not just the top few.
Widening the net on high salaries and nonprofits. Right. And then there are new excise taxes specifically on the investment income of wealthy private colleges and universities. It's tiered based on endowment per student. Starts at 1.4%, goes up to 21% for institutions with endowments over $2 million per student.
The tax on large university endowments.
Okay. Similarly, large private foundations face a new tiered excise tax on their investment income based on total assets. Rates go from 1.39% up to 10% for foundations with over $5 billion.
Taxing foundation investments, too.
And one more for tax exempts. The scope of unrelated business taxable income UBIT is expanded. Income from things like providing transit benefits, licensing names and logos, and non-public research could now be taxed.
So potentially making more nonprofit activities taxable.
That seems to be the goal, tightening the rules around nonprofit income streams.
Those are definitely significant changes for those sectors. Anything else in this section that sort of jumps out? Maybe more specific items.
There are a few. Let's call them provocative specifics.
Right.
The bill repeals the $200 transfer tax on firearms silencers. And this one could have broad impact. It repeals the de minimis entry rule, starting July 1st, 2027.
De minimis. That's the rule, allowing small packages under $800 to come into the U.S. duty-free. Right, from anywhere.
Exactly that. It gets rid of that worldwide allowance. What stands out to you about how that might affect online shopping or maybe small businesses importing things?
Yeah, I mean, that could significantly raise costs for consumers buying directly from overseas sellers online, and maybe complicate things for small businesses relying on small, frequent imports. Big change for e-commerce.
Potentially huge, yeah. Affects platforms like Shein, Temu, others directly. And one more. A limit on how much sports teams can deduct for the value of intangible assets, like franchise rights. Limited to 50% of the basis.
Okay. Interesting mix in that section. Let's move to the next theme. Ensuring integrity, tackling what the bill calls fraud, waste, and abuse. This sounds like it might involve eligibility rules again.
That's correct. This section has some very pointed changes, particularly around eligibility for certain government benefits based on immigration status. It's important to note the source document uses the term illegal immigrants, and the bill's provisions reflect that terminology.
Okay, understood. Presenting the content as it's written. What are the changes?
Primarily around health benefits and education credits. For the premium tax credit, the Subsidies for Affordable Care Act plan's eligibility is explicitly eliminated for those the bill terms illegal immigrants. It restricts PTCs mainly to lawful permanent residents, certain Cuban immigrants, and people from Compact or Free Association nations.
So who loses eligibility specifically?
The bill prohibits PTCs for anyone with asylum status, even pending, parole status, TPS, or DED. It also closes what it calls a loophole, where some immigrants below the poverty line could get PTCs during the 5-year wait for Medicaid.
Okay, and Medicare.
Similar restrictions. Medicare eligibility is also eliminated for those referred to as illegal immigrants, using rules similar to the PTC changes.
Right. What else in this vein?
There's a new 5% excise tax imposed on people sending remittance transfers money sent abroad.
A tax on sending money overseas.
Yes, collected by the money transfer company. There's an exemption if the sender can verify they are a U.S. citizen or national. Those individuals can also get a refundable tax credit back if they have a valid SSN.
Okay. Taxing remittances with a carve-out for citizens.
And for education credits, the AOTC and Lifetime Learning Credit, you now need a valid SSN for both the student and the taxpayer claiming the credit.
SSN required for student and filer for education credits. Got it.
So those are the main eligibility changes tied to immigration status.
Okay. What about broader anti-fraud measures not tied to status?
Several things there, too. For those premium tax credits, again, the bill requires active annual verification of income and eligibility. No more passive renewals.
More checks for ACA subsidies.
Yes. And $25 million is allocated for HHS to use artificial intelligence AI to try and find and recover improper Medicare payments.
Using AI and Medicare audits.
For the COVID-era employee retention credits, ERTC, penalties go up for promoters pushing fraudulent claims. And critically, the IRS is barred from paying out any new ERTC claims filed after January 31st, 2024, basically shutting the door on late or potentially suspect claims.
Cutting off the ERTC pipeline.
Okay. For the Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC, it sets up a system to catch duplicate claims earlier, moving towards pre-certifying eligibility. The idea is to cut errors without holding up legitimate refunds.
Trying to improve EITC accuracy.
Right. And the IRS's own free tax filing pilot program, Direct File, that gets terminated, replaced instead by a mandate for a new public-private partnership for free filing options. So relying on existing software companies, it seems.
End of direct file, shift to partnership model.
The Treasury Secretary gets new power to suspend the tax-exempt status of nonprofits found to be providing material support to designated terrorist groups.
Okay.
And finally, penalties for anyone illegally disclosing taxpayer information. They get massively increased, up to a $250,000 fine and 10 years in prison.
Serious deterrent there. So a lot of tightening up on enforcement and eligibility across the board.
That's the clear focus of this section.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground: families, businesses, energy, integrity rules. There's one last piece, right?
Yeah.
The bottom line, literally.
That's right. Beyond all the tax code changes, the bill addresses that fundamental piece of the national financial puzzle, the debt limit.
And what does it do?
It's straightforward.
Yeah.
The bill includes a modification to the limit on public debt. It increases the statutory debt limit by $4 trillion.
$4 trillion. Okay, a significant increase in borrowing authority tied to all these other changes.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, this one, big, beautiful bill.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly lives up to the big part. Maybe the beautiful is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
It really does touch practically everything. Individual taxes, business rules, who gets health benefits, energy policy, online shopping, and the national debt. It's a massive reshaping.
It really is. And if you step back and connect it all, you see a clear attempt to shift legislative priorities. It's actively trying to encourage certain things, domestic manufacturing, maybe certain family structures, specific types of savings,
Right.
while strongly disincentivizing others' reliance on certain foreign supply chains, certain types of nonprofit activity, previous green energy investments. It really raises a big question for you listening. As you think about all these changes, the incentives, the restrictions, how do you see them potentially reshaping things? You know, the future for American families, for businesses trying to navigate this, even our whole energy picture. How might it look different in the coming years because of a bill like this?
That's definitely the question to ponder. A lot
Right.
to think about there. That's our deep dive for today. Until next time, keep digging for those insights.